Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started with the webinar in just a few minutes and make sure we get everybody in here on time. All right, I think we're going to get started now. Just to double check, can everybody hear me okay? Awesome, thanks, Abby. All right, I'm going to share my screen now, and we can get started with today's webinar. All right, welcome to the February contractor training for energy storage solutions. Just as a recap, for all of you here today, the eligible contractor application for energy storage solutions consists of a written form and some document review, which I assume most of you have already filled out, and also the second part of the application is attending one of these webinars. To start, we're going to go over and we're going to have an overview of the program. Then we'll go into some of the specifics of incentives and how to calculate those. Then we'll go through the contractor application portal, which is managed through Salesforce. And then we'll also do a quick walkthrough of the Energy Storage Solutions website and where you can find a lot of the materials that we'll be going over today. To start, there's some updates for the program that come from the state regulatory authority called PURA. The first of those is for all commercial and industrial projects in the program. All upfront incentive approvals are going to pause on June 15th, 2024. This is in order to reevaluate the current incentive levels for commercial projects, and the upfront incentive approvals will likely not open up until a decision is made in the year 4 program review, which will be towards the end of 2024. To help clarify, this pause on June 15th is for all incentive approvals, meaning even if you submit an application for a commercial and industrial project before June 15th, there's no guarantee that you'll receive an approval before that time. So the program administrators highly recommend get in any of those applications. If you do have projects that you're planning, get those in as soon as possible to allow for enough time for your application to be reviewed and hopefully approved. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to mention, just general housekeeping. If you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat or using the Q&A function at the top of your screen. I'll do my best to get to those during the presentation, but if I don't, there'll be a time at the end where I'll be able to go through those as well. The next regulatory update is about the application process working group. If any of you have been following along with the program over the past few weeks to months, there's been a working group that the program administrators have been leading to help improve the application process for the program. Currently, all of the working group meetings have concluded, and the program administrators are in the process of writing up a final report that's due to PIRA by March 15th. In this report, we're prepping some proposed changes to the application process, and we'll expect to have a ruling from PIRA at some point after March 15th. So from that point on, there's the possibility of some changes to the application process. So some of the material and subject matter that we'll go over today, there might be some changes in the future, so just be aware of that. All right, now on to the program. So Energy Storage Solutions is a 9-year declining incentive program with a main goal of deploying 580 megawatts of behind-the-meter energy storage. And this 580 megawatt goal is split evenly between residential and non-residential customers. As you see in the table below, we have 3 specific capacity tranches. There's the 2022 to 2024 tranche, which consists of 50 megawatts. 25 to 27 is 100 megawatts, and 28 to 30 is 140 megawatts. Right now, the residential program is still in that first 50 megawatt tranche, but the commercial and industrial portion of the program is actually ahead of schedule, and we've already opened up tranche 2. So if you have any commercial projects, those projects will those incentives and those projects will be allocated to the second tranche. Next up here is an overview of how the different dispatch events and also the different incentives are structured in the program. To start with incentives, we classify our customers in a few different ways. So residential customers will either fall under the standard, underserved, or low-income categories. And commercial and industrial customers will fall under the small, medium, or large categories. I'll go into a little more detail later about how these work, but for now, for commercial and industrial customers, that's largely based on annual peak demand, and then the residential customer classes are work a little differently. But again, I'll go over those on the next few slides. In terms of incentives, there are 2 incentives that customers can receive. Just so you're aware, these incentives, all customers can receive both of them. You don't have to choose the upfront incentive or the performance incentive. That's a common question we get, but customers are eligible for both as long as they meet the necessary requirements. So for the upfront incentive, the way it works is if a customer wants to receive the upfront incentive, they are required to sign up and participate in passive dispatch. Passive dispatch are, as the name suggests, these events are pre-programmed into the battery, and these events will occur on all non-holiday weekdays from June, July to August. They're 5 hours in length, and they occur from 3 to 8 p.m. Note that passive dispatch events only occur during the summer, and they won't happen in the winter. Again, customers to receive the full upfront incentive, they'll need to do their best to participate in all of these passive dispatch events if possible. There is a rule or a guideline where any customers that aren't able to participate in greater than, or any customers that participate in less than 90% of these passive dispatch events might be eligible or might be subject to a clawback, meaning that they might have to pay a certain fee for non-participation. Secondly, the performance-based incentive. This is similar to incentives in Connected Solutions, which is a different demand response program that's administered by Eversource. If you're at all familiar with that program, that's how the performance incentive for energy storage solutions is pretty similar. So it's a pay-for-performance incentive. Yes, the slides will be shared after. I'll send those out and include those. I think there's a copy on the Energy Storage Solutions website. If not, I'll make sure to get these out probably on the website later. Back to the performance incentive, pay for performance. So if there's any active dispatch events that are called, customers can opt into these events and they'll be compensated for them. These events are opt-in, so they're not like passive dispatch. You're not required to participate in them if you don't want to. These events can occur during the summer and winter, but most of them will occur in the summer, and they'll rather than lasting 5 hours like passive dispatch, these events can last anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, and the general window that they're called is between noon and 9 p.m. Another thing to note is that active dispatch events, the utilities will call these events with around 24 hours notice. And if an active dispatch event coincides with a passive dispatch event, the passive dispatch event for that day will be canceled. Customers don't have to participate in it, so there's no need to dispatch twice in one day. So no need for customers to worry about that. Another thing to note is that for passive and active dispatch, if the utilities forecast a storm-related outage during that day or just within that general time frame, the utilities will cancel both of those events. The customers will be able to use their battery for storm-related purposes to make sure they have it available in case they do lose power. Next up are some of the incentive rates for residential customers. These rates were recently increased as part of the year 3 final program review. So for standard customers, we'll focus on this top row of incentives here for this first capacity block. Standard customers can receive $250 per kilowatt hour of capacity installed. Underserved customers will receive 400. I think this should actually be $400, not $450. They'll receive $400 per kilowatt hour, and low-income customers receive $600 per kilowatt hour. These incentives for residential customers, the upfront incentive is capped at either $16,000 or 50% of the total battery system cost, whichever of those two numbers is lower. You might be wondering how to figure out whether a customer falls under the underserved or low income categories. For the underserved category, it's relatively simple. There's a list of municipalities in Connecticut. It's updated every year by the state. If a customer lives in any of those towns, they'll qualify for this incentive, and that list is published on the Energy Storage Solutions website. Again, I'll show you where that is later. The low income customer class, any customer that there's a few ways that we can verify that, but the main thing to be aware of is any customer that qualifies for this low income incentive rate, they'll just need to submit a low income affidavit with the rest of the paperwork for the incentive application. Again, that paperwork is also included on the Energy Storage Solutions website. So I'll show again where that's all located later. In addition to the incentive rates, all customers can receive a 50% adder if they're a Grid Edge customer. Grid Edge customers, the way that works is it's a classification from the utilities, and it essentially is any customer that receives I believe it's they receive they experience either greater or longer than average power outages. It's a little more complicated than that, but the way to verify that is there's a website that both utilities have, and you type in the address of the customer, and then it'll zoom in on their address on a map, and there'll be different symbols or different colored lines on that map. And so if a customer is on one of those, I think it's a blue or a red line, they're considered Grid Edge. I'll walk through those websites later in this presentation as well to just give you kind of a feel of how to use those, but it's a very quick and easy process. Below here are the performance incentive levels. For summer and winter year 1 through 5, they're $200 per average kilowatt and $25 per average kilowatt respectively. And then these incentives do decrease after the first 5 years of participation. Up next are the commercial incentive levels. The way this works, as I mentioned, there's the small, medium, and large commercial and industrial category. These categories are based off annual peak demand, so less than 200 is a kilowatt. Less than 200 kilowatts is a small C&I customer. 200 to 500 is a medium customer, and greater than 500 is a large customer. And so depending on those categories, they would then qualify for the associated incentive levels. There's a priority customer adder for upfront incentives for commercial customers. It works a little differently than the Grid Edge adder for residential customers. This adder is for 25% in additional upfront incentives, and there's a few different ways a commercial customer could qualify for this. Some of the different qualifications are whether the customer is a small business. Another one is if they're replacing a fossil fuel generator on site. A third, I believe, is if they're a Grid Edge customer. And there's a fourth that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. But those again are all on the website resources page. Performance incentive levels for commercial customers are the exact same as residential customers. For commercial upfront incentives, the incentives are capped at 50% of the total battery cost. Next here, this is just a list of the currently approved equipment manufacturers for energy storage solutions. For a customer to receive any of the incentives and to be approved and to participate in the program, they must use one of the batteries that are on our eligible equipment list. This list is always changing, and it's always growing. So there's a process to apply or to request to include a new technology in the program. This could be an inverter, a battery and inverter. So if any of you don't see a specific manufacturer or a specific battery model on this list, you can always apply to you can always submit an application to the program administrators, and we'll review that and hopefully approve it. And then in that case, you'll be able to install those batteries and inverters under the program. Again, this list is always growing, so feel free to check back on our website at any time. There's a good chance that there's probably some new entries there. I'll show this is in a similar spot on our website, and I'll show this later during the presentation. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quick, and then I'll switch over to the website and show you where some of these resources are. All right, so this is the Energy Storage Solutions website. EnergyStorageCT.com. Let me just zoom in. This is the main page. A lot of the different resources and materials that you'll need during the application process or just for general information will be located here on the for contractors tab. And then you'll start here and go to contractor resources. Most of you have probably found your way to this page already, since this is where you actually start the application process to become an eligible contractor. But if you scroll below, there's also a link to the enrollment application portal, which we'll go through in a little bit, as well as an FAQ page link. There's a whole list of other informational materials here. There's some regulatory documents. There's the program manual. Here is where the updated webinar slides will be at this link here, as well as links to things like the incentive calculator, as well as the payment schedule that the Green Bank sends out, upfront incentive payments. To start, I'm going to give you a quick demo of that grid edge verification map that I mentioned earlier. So any customer that you think might be on the grid edge, if you want to verify that, this is the way to do it. So you'll see here there's an Eversource grid edge map and a UI grid edge map. They work pretty much the exact same way. Sometimes it takes a little bit to load because there's a lot of data located on this map. But the way you do it is you go to the top left here and enter in the address of the customer. We'll put in 75 Charter Oak, which is the Green Bank's address. Then it'll zoom in. Again, sometimes when you zoom in, the different layers that show the grid edge circuit lines, they won't load in right away. So in the bottom right, you can't see it now, but there'll be like a little loading icon. Just make sure that's done loading before exiting. The Green Bank isn't actually on a grid edge circuit, so there are no lines here. But I'll show you what it would look like if the customer is on the grid edge. Zoom out. You can see already zoomed out some of the lines, but here in West Hartford, once it loads, sometimes takes a while. Any day now. All right, I guess this is not going to load for us today, but if I zoom out, sometimes you can see it. But again, any property or address that's adjacent to either a blue or a red line on the street, you'll see it. You can see it now all the way zoomed out, but when you zoom in, these will eventually load in. But these blue and red lines, those are all grid edge circuits. So any customer's property that is next to one of those lines, that's considered grid edge. If you ever have any questions, you're not sure if a customer is grid edge, they might be on a street next to a grid edge circuit. Feel free to reach out to the program administrators. You can reach out at, I believe the address is energystorage@ctgreenbank.com. We'll be happy to help answer any questions and check on that for you. Okay. After the grid edge map links, there's also the underserved communities list, which I mentioned earlier. I'll show that really quick, but that's an Excel sheet here. They're ranked, they're listed here ranked and also alphabetically. In addition, there is a 5-year, I believe, a 5-year grace period for these municipalities. So that list is here. So these currently aren't underserved communities, but they still, since they were on the list at least 5 years prior, they're still eligible for the incentive. So double check this list as well to make sure you're not missing any of them. But the other thing is that's helpful is that all of this information is included on the upfront incentive calculator, which is also included on the contractor resources page. And I'll switch over to that now to show you all how that works. So this is helpful if you're in the process of planning a project or an installation. You can use this calculator if you want to give an estimate of the upfront incentive for customers as well as the performance incentive. If you notice here, we have two different tabs for residential and commercial customers. They both work pretty similarly, and there are some instructions at the top of the screen in yellow here. But as I mentioned, if you're ever confused about whether a customer is in an underserved community, there's a link here to that list as well. But you'll enter in the battery system specifications, so the power in kilowatts, the energy capacity in kWh, as well as the total cost. Note this cost will include the actual material cost of the battery as well as installation, but it should not include any costs for solar PV installation. Then here, these 3 cells, you can enter in the town they live in if it's on the underserved community list, whether or not they're a low-income customer, and whether or not they're a grid edge customer. And depending on all this, you'll get an upfront incentive calculated here, and also a rough conservative estimate for the performance incentive payments. Just to note, this process, the incentive calculation, at least for the upfront incentive, will also it'll be automatically calculated as part of the application that you submit through our contractor portal. So you don't necessarily have to go through this incentive calculator every time unless you want to verify, or if you need an incentive estimate but don't want to go through the actual application process yet, you can always come here. But speaking of that application, I'll switch over to that screen and show you how that's done. Okay. So from the contractor resources page, you'll click this second link here for the enrollment application. You'll have a sign-in page. Once you put in your credentials, you'll be able to create a new application on our portal. And once you do that, you'll see here, you'll start the application process. So this is how you submit incentive applications for both residential and commercial customers. You'll start entering in all the requested info. It's pretty self-explanatory. Basic things like customer information and address, the actual system that you're planning to install, stuff like that. If you have any questions that come up during an application, feel free to reach out to the program administrators, and we'd be happy to help. But to start, we'll just go through a pre-prepared application here. I'll zoom in again, make sure you all can see this. This customer here for the test is where I entered in as a commercial customer. This is where you'd enter in all of their name, address, city, and also contact information. This notification opt-in field here is for active dispatch notifications. So whenever the utilities do call an event, this will let us know whether or not they'd like to receive notifications. Next here is utility account information. So just some samples here, but things like utility rate, utility company, as well as annual usage and the average demand and peak demand for the customer. This next one is an option for customers. All customers are have the option to have a third-party inspection done on the system once it's been installed. The Green Bank will assign a third-party inspector to the project if the customer opts into it. If they do opt in, you'll check this box here. That'll just let us know of the decision. If not, you can just leave that blank and go to the next screen. All right, next here is some important information about the property, things like whether or not they're on the grid edge, if they're replacing a fossil fuel generator, or if they're a critical facility. This screen is pretty important because these options here, at least the top three, this is how we'll determine whether this is part of the process we check for those incentive levels again to see if they're eligible for any incentive adders. So make sure those are filled out to the best of your ability. The Green Bank will also review these just to make sure everything's been filled out correctly and make sure everyone receives the correct incentive amounts. But any help and anything you can do before the review is appreciated. Some additional information here about whether or not it's paired with solar or other kinds of generation. And then the bottom two are for the type of dispatch that the customer is participating in. Customers can participate in both active and passive to receive the upfront and performance incentive, but customers also have the option to do active only, in which they wouldn't have to participate in any passive dispatch and can just participate in active events when they want to. This next option here is asking whether the system's already been installed and energized. Some systems, we recommend that you submit these applications before our project's installed and energized, but in the off chance that that's not the case, this is just helpful here for our information to and for our tracking. All right, next, this page will look a little different on your first run through, but this next page will be helpful. This next page is helpful, and it's for filling out the specific system that's being installed. So you'll have the option to choose a system from a drop-down list of the currently eligible batteries and inverters. In the coming weeks, this will probably change a little bit. There are right now the option contractors, you have the option to select, I think it's from one list of batteries and inverters. We're going to split that list up into two different lists. For one list is just batteries and the other list will be just inverters. So just keep an eye out for that. It shouldn't change too much, and it shouldn't be a little clearer once that change is rolled out. But once you choose the system, you can click next. There are also some options to modify if you made a mistake or if you want to add a battery. So you can choose from the list below if needed. All right. Next here is the cost and financing page. So this is helpful again for the Green Bank. We like to track this information. So you have the option to say whether the project was purchased, whether it's a lease or a PPA, as well as the financing type if applicable. And then below, the cost information is important too. One important thing to note is that all of the cost information, all of these fields here that I have highlighted, this information should relate to the battery only. It shouldn't have any costs associated with solar PV systems or the installation of any panels. That cost information should go in this lower field. It's important just for our tracking and data purposes that we keep those costs separate. All right. Now, this is what I mentioned earlier, the incentive based on the info that you put in earlier in the application. This incentive will get calculated automatically. It kind of shows you how I did it here. If there's ever any questions about this, if you think something might have gone wrong or you're just not sure, again, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help and adjust that if needed. Next, this page just is a follow-up. So once you submit all the previous information, there are some documents you'll need to submit as well. This changes depending on the project type, but this is just a reminder and a list of all the documents needed. Like here, there's a site plan, an interconnection application confirmation, electric bill, and a lease or PPA or sales agreement. And I'll show you where to input those documents next. So this page is now the record of the application you submitted and all the different fields that you put in will be on the left side here. But to upload documents, what you'll do is you go to the right-hand side of the screen to this drop-down menu, and this will show you all of the requested documents. All documents that are marked as required, you need to submit before you can actually finalize the application and send it to the Green Bank. So you'll choose on whatever document when you upload, say the electric bill, then you'll click upload here and choose the file from your computer. Once all the required documents here have been submitted, you'll see a new green button pop up here that'll say submit for review, and you'll click that, and then we'll receive it at the Green Bank and be able to review it, and we'll notify you of the decision shortly after. If this application is approved, you'll then get the all clear to start installation. Once the project's been completely installed, there's a second application process through this portal that's just to verify that the correct system's been installed. This is our completion phase, and so I'll show you now how to do that. So once the project's been initially approved, once it's been installed, you'll see here there's the sample project. This stage says installation in progress. At any point once the project's been installed, you'll be able to come back to the project record, and then you'll see that this green button now says enter completion info. You'll click here, and it'll take you to fill out some additional verification fields like the utility approval to energize date, which is say today, the utility inverter rating, as well as there's the option to record the energy audit type that the customer had done. An important thing to note: if there was a change order that occurred, this is the time to let the Green Bank know about that. So you'll click this box on the top here, and that'll take you to a few extra screens to input the additional batteries or inverters that you added, or to remove any that were initially part of the application. Another thing to note is that for change orders, we do ask for an updated sales agreement or sales contract, just to make sure that we have verifiable proof that change order actually occurred. Next page here is for the performance incentive payments. So most of the time, customers will be the ones to receive the payments directly. In the case of different projects, some will be third-party owned. So that's depending. It's on a case-by-case basis, but sometimes the performance incentives will go to the third-party owner. But again, for most customers, this payments will go to the host customer, and you'll just input 100% here. All right. If you do run into an error, you'll probably see this message. This is just happening. This test is going on in the portal sandbox, so it's not like the full version of the website. You probably won't have this happen ever. But if it does, reach out and we'll make sure to try and get it fixed. But once that last page is done, you'll just submit your additional documents for the completion application the same way as you did it for the initial incentive approval using this dropdown. There'll probably be a few extra documents here for verification. But again, once all the required documents for that second phase are submitted, you'll see a new button pop up that says submit. And then the Green Bank will then review it for a final time. And once that's all approved, once that's been approved, you'll be on your way to receiving the final incentive payment. Go back here to the slides. One thing I want to mention here that I should have mentioned on an earlier slide, but for the upfront incentives, the way those are actually paid out is the contract. So you guys, the contractors, will you pay the incentive to the customer in the form of a discount on their battery purchase. And then once the system is completely installed, the Green Bank will reimburse you for the incentive at that point. But after that, last thing here is that if you're at all interested, Energy Storage Solutions, we do offer some co-branding material. So you could, if you use this link here, again, it's on the Energy Storage Solutions website too. But if you fill out the form there, you could then receive some of these co-branding badges, whether you're a third-party owner, a contractor, or a manufacturer. If you're interested, again, the link is here, and also these slides will be posted to the website too. All right, any questions? Let's see. I think there might be a few in the chat. Slideshow. Would love to inquire about the Panasonic battery and new Panasonic inverter. Good question. Yes, Panasonic battery and inverter, they are in the process of getting approved with the program administrators. I don't have any other updates yet, but definitely keep an eye out for those. We're hoping to get that application wrapped up soon. Does the battery cost include both the inverter and labor to install? Good question. Yes, it does include. It's both battery, inverter, and labor. Do you have an update on the June 15th C&I pause? How long will the pause be? And do you have any expectations of what the changes will be? Yes, good question. So the June 15th pause, it's still going as scheduled. So likely there won't be a decision on that pause until the year 4 program review. So around that time, that's when we would expect to maybe see the commercial incentive approvals open back up. The year 4 review is, I don't think there's an exact date yet on that decision, but likely around November or December of this year. In terms of what a potential decision might implicate, we really don't know yet, and it's too early to tell, unfortunately. I hope that was helpful. What's the best email to contact for ESS application questions? Good question. Here, I'll throw it into the chat, but it's the Energy Storage Solutions inbox at the Green Bank. So energystorage@ctgreenbank.com. Here. Yeah, any questions about today's presentation or applications in general, feel free to send them to that address. To clarify, it will likely pause for the entire year after June, and will this include active dispatch? Another good question. So the pause, yes, it'll be in effect from June 15th and likely for the rest of the year, but no, this won't include active dispatch. It's just passive dispatch customers. So any commercial customer that's interested in participating in passive dispatch and getting an upfront incentive, they'll have to wait until that decision comes out, likely towards the end of the year. If there are commercial customers that are interested in participating in just active dispatch, they can still apply, but again, they won't be able to receive the upfront incentive. Checking, is this email no longer active? ESS communications at ctgreenbank.com. Okay, that email isn't monitored. That's typically any inquiries go to the other email address that I added. The ESS communications email is not an email we use for responses. That's used for just that's used for tracking other communications. I hope that was helpful, Jessica. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to help answer offline. Any expected changes for residential programs? Any discussions for inverters? Which also part of a solar system? Which battery charge and can charge EV at the same time? Okay. Seems like you have questions about changes, like new technologies for the program or any new approvals. Is that correct? Am I reading your question right, Gail? Maybe. Okay. So right now, I know there were some inquiries in previous months about something like vehicle to grid charging. I don't know if that relates at all to your question. Currently, there's no plans to include technology like that in the program. It could always change, but right now we don't have any plans coming up to include technologies like that. Again, our eligible equipment list is always changing, and we're always adding new manufacturers and battery models and inverters to that. So definitely keep checking in on that list for any future updates. But if you also have specific models in mind, you can always submit a technology application as well on our website. I know there are talks about application in the application working group about streamlining active dispatch, removing unnecessary documents. Do you have any updates on this? Yes. So the program administrators are right now writing the final report for the application process working group. That report's due to PURA by March 15th. And then we hope to get a decision from PURA on some of those specific changes at sometime after that. And we'll work to implement whatever those changes are, hopefully soon after, to get those up and running as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I don't have any specifics yet, but once that report is published closer to March 15th, you'll have some more information there. Yep, no problem. All right, I'll leave a few more minutes for questions if anybody has them. But if I don't see anything else, thank you all for attending. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to reach out to the energy storage at ctgreenbank.com email address if you have other questions that pop up. In addition, if you ever feel like you need a refresher on some of this information, you can always attend future contractor trainings. Those are going to be held monthly. But again, if there's no other questions, y'all can feel free to hop off. Oh, here's one. Where's a list of approved contractors? Good questions. Good question. I can actually show you all quickly. That's again on our energy storage CT website. Here, so see this Find a Contractor tab on the page here. If you just click there. Here are all the different eligible contractors. You can search by name, city, zip code, and there's a few different filters here to use. But yeah, any eligible contractor, it will be listed here. So once you all complete the eligible contractor process, your company will be listed here as well. Will there be a recording of this webinar? There will be, and I believe at least the slides and probably the recording will be posted as well to the energy storage website at some point after. I know backup power capability is required. How much of a commercial building demand is needed to be backed up to be eligible? There's no, I think I'll try and answer this question. I think I understand what you're saying. There's no minimum required to be backed up for commercial buildings, but there is something that's sort of, I think, similar to what you're asking. There is like a maximum system size. So a system, for example, I believe it can't be its output. It can't be greater than 1.5 times the annual demand for the building. Does that help answer your question, Michael? Let's see. Next question is, can you talk a little more on grid edge for incentives? Yes. So I mentioned this earlier in the presentation. Let me just go back to that slide quickly. Here. So for residential customers, any residential customer that's on the grid edge can receive plus 50% for their upfront incentive. For commercial customers, if they're on the grid edge, they'll receive 25% in additional upfront incentives. Do you have a question? Was your question specifically about the incentive numbers, or do you have a question also about how to find out if you're grid edge? How to find out. Okay. Yep. I'll show you really quickly. So if you go to the Energy Storage Solutions website and go to Contractor Resources, scroll down a bit, and then you'll see here under this Priority Customer Incentive Adder section, there's the Eversource Grid Edge Map and UI Grid Edge Map. So depending on who your utility company is, you'll just go to one of these links. And once you're on the page, you'll enter in the address in this search bar in the top left. And what you're looking for is, you can see as we're zoomed out, there's a bunch of blue and red lines. So those are the grid edge circuits. So I'll just zoom in quickly to one of these. But if a property is on one of these blue or red lines, they're considered a grid edge customer. So they would then receive that additional incentive adder. As I mentioned earlier when I was going through this, sometimes this website's really slow. So make sure it loads all the way before you exit out. But yeah, sometimes when you zoom in and zoom out, it'll take a while. The lines might disappear briefly, but yeah. So anybody on one of these lines is a grid edge customer. What's the difference between blue or red? I believe the difference is that I think it just is how that physical circuit is like whether it's above ground or below ground. For incentive purposes, it makes no difference. I'm not 100% sure though. That's more of a question for the utilities. Oh, I see. Oh, Daryl. Sorry, I almost missed your question. How long after applications are submitted does it take to become approved? And do you have a copy of the initial slide deck? For the slide deck, yeah, this will be, there's a version of the slide deck currently on the Energy Storage Solutions website, and this will, I can update it after this as well. In terms of the application timeline, applications are typically reviewed and approved within 3 to 5 business days. If there are some revisions needed or there's any reason that the application had to get rejected, that'll probably delay that. But assuming there's no issues, you should hear back again within 3 to 5 business days. How long will these incentives be in place? Good question. So um, the program right now is set to run through 2030. So incentives will be available until then, unless there's a change or PRA orders a change for these incentives. Right now, I would, for residential customers and commercial customers, assume these incentives for the time being. Again, just to reiterate, this is a little bit of a different case for commercial customers since there will be an incentive pause on June 15th. Um, this could result in changes for commercial incentives, but again, assume these incentives going forward until PURA issues a ruling. Typically, if incentives do change, this process happens during one of the program reviews, and these program reviews do happen yearly. Um, but yeah, I hope that helped answer your question. Can we offer batteries only and have it tied to a solar array? Yes, you can. That's a good question. Um, yeah, we have a few contractors who do that already. You can either do standalone batteries that aren't tied to a solar array. If a customer has a solar array already and they just want to add the battery, that's fine. And if a customer wants to do a fresh install for solar and batteries, that's all allowed for the program. And we also as part of the contractor application, you can if you have like specific services like that you'd want to have published on the eligible contractor screen, just let us know and we'd be happy to publish that information um, under your specific company's listing on the website. All right, still have a few more minutes left, so if there are any other questions, feel free to send them in the chat. Thanks again, everybody, for attending. I'll stay here for a few minutes in case anybody has more questions. Any handouts that we can give to our customers? Do you mean like paper flyers, like for informational flyers? Yes. Good question. I'm actually I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure if Abby is still here. Abby's on our marketing team. She might have an answer for that. If not, I can find out for you and get back to you.
Yeah, hi Matt. I'm here. We do have handouts. I think they are on the website currently, but we can check to double check if they're available yet, and maybe Matt can reach back out to you once we know for sure.
Thanks, Abby.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ben. I'll make sure I'll double check on that and get back to you there. Are state budget cuts able to affect programs? Good question. Short answer, it depends. Right now, right now the way this program works is it's ratepayer funded. So all of the incentives and administrative costs are based off of public funds from state or from utility um, or from the state utilities and through their electric rates. So that's kind of the best answer I can give there. Uh, Ben, I'm not sure about that question. It's best to ask the utility specifically there. Sorry about that. Oh, great. Thanks, Abby. Yeah, if you're interested in any flyers, feel free to go onto the contractor resources page for those. Thanks, Ben. Any else? I'll still stay on here for a few more minutes. If anybody has more questions, feel free to send them. If not, you can feel free to log off. Again, I'll stay here until around 1 o'clock, so 2 more minutes left. And thanks again for everybody for attending and answering or asking all these questions. Hopefully today's webinar was helpful. All right, I think we're all set on questions. If anything comes up, again, please reach out to the energy storage email address. I'll send it right now one more time in the chat. But any questions, feel free to reach out there and we'd be happy to help answer. All right, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.